The attic was silent when Elena lifted the velvet box. Inside, nothing. The sapphire necklace her grandmother promised was gone. Only a folded letter lay in the corner. Her name wasn't on it. It was addressed to her sister, Madison. Elena read the trembling handwriting in disbelief. Her parents had given the heirloom to Madison years ago. They claimed Elena already had enough. They said Madison had the bigger heart. A chill spread through her chest. This wasn't a simple mistake. It felt like a pattern she had ignored for years. A quiet favoritism woven into every memory. The empty box suddenly felt heavier than the jewels ever could. Elena felt the past rising as sharply as the cold air in the attic. Memories she thought were harmless began to shift in shape. Her 10th birthday surfaced first, bright and painful at the same time. She remembered wishing for a small science kit she had begged for all year. But the theme was changed at the last minute to match Madison's ballet craze. Pink ribbons covered the backyard, even though Elena hated pink. Everyone clapped when Madison performed a dance that wasn't even planned. Elena blew out her candles, while people watched Madison twirl in the corner. Her mother later said it was fine, because Elena was easygoing. That word had followed her like a shadow for years. In middle school, the pattern grew sharper. Elena studied late every night, chasing scholarships and top grades. Her teachers praised her endlessly, amazed by her discipline. At home, her achievements barely stirred a reaction. Her father glanced at honor certificates and shrugged. He said he expected nothing less from her. But when Madison earned a minor art mention, the house erupted with excitement. They hung the ribbon in the hallway like a trophy. Elena's awards stayed in a drawer near the bathroom. She told herself it didn't matter back then. But now, in the attic, every memory felt like evidence. She recalled a family trip where Madison got motion sickness. Everyone stopped everything to comfort her for hours. Elena sat alone in the lobby with their luggage, waiting for instructions. Her mother thanked her for being the reliable one. It sounded kind at the time, but now felt like a dismissal. She remembered school nights when she cooked dinner because her parents worked late. Madison lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone. When Elena asked for help, Madison said she was tired from choir practice. Her parents praised Madison for being artistic. They praised Elena for being responsible. Only one of those praises carried warmth. As Elena pieced the memories together, a quiet anger formed. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady like a rising tide. She remembered Christmas morning, when she saved enough to buy gifts for everyone. Her parents smiled politely and moved on quickly. Madison gave them a hand-drawn card, and they cried from emotion. Elena laughed then, pretending she understood. She didn't understand. Not until now, surrounded by dust and silence. The older she grew, the more invisible she became. People asked her for help, but rarely asked how she felt. She was the one who kept things running smoothly. The one who didn't need much. The one who was always fine. The one they assumed would never break. As she stood there holding the empty jewelry box, a truth settled in. She was never the chosen one. She was simply the convenient one. Elena brushed dust from the spine of the old album, as if clearing fog from a memory. The leather cover felt heavier than it should. She opened it slowly, expecting family photos and harmless nostalgia. Instead, the first page struck her like a blow. Madison stood smiling in a sunlit garden, wearing the pearl necklace Grandma once promised Elena. The caption beneath it read, "Madison's Pearls." Elena blinked, unsure if she remembered incorrectly. She turned the page and found Madison again, this time with the ruby ring. A ring Grandma had let Elena try on when she was 7. A ring Grandma said would be hers one day. The caption read, "Gifted to Madison." Her stomach tightened as she flipped faster. Every page repeated the same quiet betrayal. Madison wearing the jade hairpin that belonged to their great-grandmother. Madison posing with the gold bracelet from their grandmother's engagement set. Each caption made the transfers sound official, intentional, permanent. There were no photos of Elena anywhere. Not even ones where the items might have been borrowed or shared. It was as if she had been erased from the lineage entirely. Elena traced the edges of one photograph with her thumb. She remembered the day the jade hairpin had been shown to them. Grandma told a story about its origin and brushed it gently against Elena's hair. She had whispered, "This will look beautiful on you someday." But in the picture, Madison wore it proudly at a winter recital. Elena hadn't even known it left the jewelry box. The album pages crackled as she continued. Her pulse thudded harder with each turn. This was not an accident or a misunderstanding. It was a pattern stretching across years, hidden in plain sight. Her parents must have taken each piece intentionally, transferred it quietly, documented it proudly, and never once mentioned it to her. Elena recalled asking once about the ruby ring when she was 15. Her mother said she had misplaced it years ago. But there it was in the album, gleaming on Madison's hand. Page after page showed celebrations Elena barely remembered. Birthdays she wasn't invited to. Recitals she didn't attend. Trips she wasn't told about. All occasions where another heirloom was passed along. The photos painted a version of the family Elena didn't recognize. A family where Madison stood at the center of every story. A family where Elena was a footnote, or not even that. She felt a strange numbness settle over her as she closed the album. It wasn't the jewelry itself that hurt. It was the effort it took to hide the truth. The secrecy required to rewrite ownership. The deliberate way her presence had been edited out. Elena held the album against her chest, feeling its weight. It felt like a confession, trapped in leather binding. A record of a quiet inheritance stolen piece by piece. And for the first time, she realized she had proof. Elena sat at her desk, staring at the empty space where the necklace should have been. Her hands trembled, but her mind was sharp. The anger she had felt before now felt colder, more focused. She would not let this pass silently. She opened her laptop and started a new folder labeled Evidence. Every photograph, letter, and memory went inside. Each item was a piece of a puzzle she was determined to complete. She returned to her parents' study, a room she had avoided for years. Drawers creaked under her fingers as she searched through stacks of papers. Receipts for gifts never given to her. Letters meant to reassure her, but redirected to Madison. Emails between relatives that quietly excluded her from important decisions. Every document added weight to the case she was building. She worked late into the night, compiling timelines and notes. Dates, names, objects, every detail meticulously recorded. She reread Grandma's old letters to both sisters. Each word was carefully scrutinized for hidden meaning. She found one addressed to her mother about Elena's supposed lack of need. Her mother had framed Elena as independent and strong. It sounded like praise then. Now it felt like an excuse. An excuse to ignore her. Elena created spreadsheets, tracking every piece of jewelry. Every gift that was promised and never delivered. Every occasion where she was excluded. Patterns emerged clearly. Madison had been favored consistently. Elena had been written out of the family story. She realized this wasn't about greed. It was about narrative control. About who was seen as worthy. About who mattered in the family's eyes. Her pulse steadied as the emotion transformed into purpose. She printed out copies of the key documents, marked dates and names in red, highlighted evidence of intentional exclusion. Every page told the same story. She had been denied her rightful place. She labeled the stack, History of Exclusion. It was no longer just anger. It was preparation. Elena became a detective in her own life. She interviewed old friends and family members over the phone. asked questions carefully, collecting memories that aligned with her findings. She logged responses, noting contradictions and confirmations. Each new account strengthened the narrative she had uncovered. She began drafting letters to relatives, carefully worded, hinting at truths without revealing everything. She watched reactions, noting who was willing to believe and who resisted. Her cold anger now had a direction. It was no longer personal hurt. It was investigation. It was strategy. She could see the truth taking shape, like a puzzle finally complete. The empty jewelry box from the attic was no longer just a symbol. It was the starting point. Everything else followed logically. Elena felt a sense of control she had never experienced before. For the first time, she was not invisible. For the first time, she held the facts, the evidence, and the power. The quiet star had become a force to be reckoned with. She leaned back in her chair and looked at the organized chaos on her desk. Every photo, note, and email was a step closer to the confrontation she had long feared. A confrontation that she now knew she would face fully prepared. Elena was no longer a bystander in her own story. She was the author of the next chapter. Elena dialed her Aunt Helen's number with a steady hand. Her heart beat faster as the line connected. She asked about the meeting, where Grandma's jewelry had been divided. Helen hesitated before answering. She said Elena had been too busy at the time. Her words felt like a punch to the gut. Elena pressed for more details. Helen admitted they were told. Elena didn't need the small, sentimental things. Her father had described her as practical and strong. Helen said everyone accepted that explanation without question. Elena felt a cold clarity settle over her. It wasn't forgetfulness. It wasn't mistake. It was deliberate. She called Uncle Richard next. He repeated the same story about Elena being busy and independent. He said they assumed she understood, that she didn't care about trivial heirlooms. Elena asked why no one questioned this at the time. Richard admitted they trusted her parents' judgment completely. They thought they were protecting her. But Elena could hear the unease in his voice. It was too late to protect anything. Her parents had shaped a narrative that erased her from the family history. She asked about every item she remembered being promised. Richard mentioned gifts given to Madison over the years. Each item confirmed the pattern she had discovered in the album. Her anger simmered under her skin. This was systematic, intentional. She asked Helen if she had any letters, emails, or notes about the distribution. Helen fumbled through memories and said she might have some old messages. Elena requested copies. She listened carefully to every story, every memory shared. She took notes with meticulous precision. Every account built the case she was constructing. She realized the family had been led to believe Elena didn't want anything. Her parents had told them she didn't care. Madison had been positioned as the chosen child. Elena's exclusion was planned, not accidental. She felt both anger and vindication. Helen admitted she felt guilty now for trusting the story without question. Richard said he wished they had known the truth earlier. Elena noted every phrase, every hesitation, every change in tone. She understood how the family had been manipulated. She understood why no one had intervened sooner. It was a careful orchestration, and she had been the silent victim. Elena felt the weight of years of oversight and deception. Her parents' manipulation extended beyond objects. It had affected perceptions, relationships, and trust. She collected all the new messages and confirmations in her evidence folder. Every detail reinforced what she already suspected. The pattern was undeniable. It was not about the jewelry alone. It was about control, favoritism, and rewriting her role in the family. Elena felt a surge of resolve. She would confront this with proof. Every aunt, uncle, and cousin she spoke to strengthened her narrative. Her story was finally becoming visible to those who had been blind. The quiet injustice of her childhood was now documented, undeniable. She had uncovered a deliberate attempt to erase her from her own inheritance. And she was ready to face it. This confrontation would no longer be one-sided. She held the evidence in her hands. The truth was hers to present. The family could no longer ignore it. Elena knew she was no longer the overlooked child. She was the one demanding to be seen. Elena started sharing her findings with the relatives she trusted most. She sent scanned emails and photos, along with notes and dates. Responses came slowly at first, cautious and uncertain. Some were apologetic, admitting they hadn't realized the full story. Others were shocked, unable to believe how carefully she had been excluded. Her Aunt Helen wrote that she felt blindsided by the truth. Uncle Richard admitted he had always assumed Elena didn't care about the heirlooms. Cousins who had been close to Madison expressed regret for celebrating her so openly. Elena documented every reply, every acknowledgement, every apology. She added each to her growing evidence folder. Every message strengthened her case. Every memory confirmed the pattern of exclusion. She felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The family she had once seen as indifferent was slowly starting to understand. Her actions had opened their eyes to the manipulation. They began to see that Elena had not chosen distance. They realized she had been pushed aside. Her relatives sent photos of events Elena had been left out of. Old emails showing invitations she never received surfaced. They included notes about jewelry and gifts redirected to Madison. Elena compared each piece to her evidence, fitting everything together. The timeline became undeniable. The pattern of favoritism and manipulation stretched back decades. She noticed subtle admissions in casual messages. Some relatives confessed they had felt uncomfortable at the time. They had trusted her parents' narrative too completely. Elena printed and highlighted these admissions. She labeled them as corroborating evidence. Each confession made the family's previous indifference tangible. The relatives began to question what else had been hidden from them. They started sharing memories Elena hadn't known existed. Some revealed moments where they had tried to include her quietly. Others admitted they had been told she didn't want anything. Every contribution reinforced Elena's understanding of the past. She realized the truth was no longer hers alone. Her family now bore witness to it. The shift was subtle at first. Family gatherings started including conversations about fairness. Questions arose naturally. Why had Elena never received her grandmother's gifts? Why had Madison always been favored? Elena documented these interactions carefully. They became part of her growing record. She noticed how family members now hesitated before making assumptions. They listened when she spoke. They validated her experiences. Even small acknowledgments felt like victories. The letters, messages, and testimonies gave her confidence. She could see the tide of opinion turning. Her relatives no longer doubted her. They began to offer support rather than excuses. Elena continued compiling their statements. She added them to her History of Exclusion folder. The evidence now included both proof and witness accounts. It was undeniable that she had been wronged. The family's perception of her was finally shifting. They were beginning to see her as they never had before. Not distant or indifferent, but wronged and resilient. Elena felt the weight of isolation lift slightly. Her voice mattered. Her truth mattered. The next step was clear. She had prepared the foundation. The confrontation with her parents and Madison would not be empty. It would be backed by facts, witnesses, and undeniable proof. Elena was ready to reclaim her story. The family was beginning to recognize the reality. The moment of reckoning was approaching. And this time, she would not be ignored. Elena stood in the living room, evidence folder clutched tightly to her chest. Her parents sat across from her, faces unreadable. Madison lingered nearby, avoiding eye contact. Elena took a deep breath and opened the folder. She laid the photos, emails, and letters on the coffee table. Every document carefully organized. Every piece of evidence highlighted. She began with the earliest items, the ones from childhood. The pearls, the ruby ring, the jade hairpin. Each photo labeled with dates and captions from the family album. She spoke clearly, without emotion in her voice, explaining the pattern of gifts promised to her but given to Madison. Her parents shifted in their seats, eyes flicking nervously to one another. She showed letters from Grandma, written directly to her. Letters promising the sapphire necklace, describing it as her birthright. She pulled out a photo of herself at age 7, wearing the sapphire. The back of the photo bore a note in Grandma's hand. "To Elena, my quiet star, this is your birthright." Elena laid it down slowly so everyone could see. Her parents were silent. No words came to defend themselves. Madison looked away, guilty and uncomfortable. Elena continued, showing emails from relatives confirming she had been excluded. Messages where family members admitted they had assumed she didn't care. She pointed to receipts and notes showing every heirloom redirected to Madison. Everything was documented, every pattern traced, every lie exposed. Her father's hands shook slightly as he reached for a document. Her mother's face was pale, eyes wide. Elena could see the realization dawning on them. Their carefully constructed narrative was unraveling. She paused and let the weight of the evidence settle in the room. No excuses could cover the years of intentional exclusion. Madison finally spoke, voice quiet. "I didn't know." Elena shook her head slowly. "You were allowed to know. I was erased intentionally." Her parents opened their mouths, closed them, tried to find words. The photos, letters, and emails left no room for denial. Everything pointed to a single truth. Elena had been deliberately sidelined. Her birthright, her place in the family, her memories, all manipulated. She watched as the tension shifted from confusion to shame. No one could argue with tangible proof in front of them. Elena felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. The confrontation she had feared for years was finally happening. She looked at Madison, her sister, the favored child. "I'm not here for revenge," Elena said softly. "I just want the truth recognized. I want my place acknowledged." The room was silent, except for the rustle of papers. Her parents nodded slowly, finally understanding the depth of their actions. Elena realized the battle wasn't over, but the truth could no longer be ignored. She had faced them, armed with facts and witnesses. For the first time, she felt seen. Not just as the strong, invisible child, but as a rightful heir. Her heart pounded with both sorrow and satisfaction. The quiet star had finally stepped into the light. She folded the photo of the sapphire carefully. No words were needed. The truth had spoken for her. And in that moment, she knew she had reclaimed more than a piece of jewelry. She had reclaimed herself. Elena sat quietly in Dr. Mayer's office, holding her hands together. The confrontation had passed, but the questions lingered. It wasn't the sapphire that mattered now. It was the feeling of being chosen, of being truly seen. She spoke softly, almost to herself. "All these years, I thought it was about the jewelry." Dr. Mayers nodded, listening intently. "But it wasn't," Elena continued. "It was about being recognized, loved without conditions." The role her parents assigned, strong, independent, self-sufficient, had defined her life. It kept her from asking for help, from being vulnerable. It had taken her place in the family and her voice. Now she understood what she had lost and what she had reclaimed. She looked out the window, sunlight filtering through. The quiet star inside her had grown brighter. Elena realized she faced a choice: reclaim the necklace or reclaim her place in the family. The objects were tangible, but the love and recognition were what truly mattered. She felt a calm resolve settle in her chest. The family could no longer deny her presence or her value. Her story had been told, her voice heard. And for the first time, Elena felt whole. The past was acknowledged. The future was hers to claim. She smiled faintly, knowing she had finally found her true inheritance. It was herself,